Okay, then. So, on behalf of NIA, the Norwegian Institute at Athens, and my colleagues, Dr. Zafiriadis, researcher and advisor here at NIA, Kostas Polizos, who could not be with us, and Sofia Christopoulou, a warm welcome to you all. This is a very different event than the events we normally host. This is a promo event for an initiative taken at some point back in, was it 16 or 17, when Aphrodite, you came here to propose this collaboration. It was during our prior former directors, Jeroen Ökla, actually the last academic director in Athens, who was very interested in promoting what NIA is most known for, Teyeia. So when Dr. Kamara came by, it was in 2017, I think, to propose this collaboration, it was obvious that Teyeia would sort of be the center of our interest. But what is RoadWiki? Let's take things from the start. RoadWiki is an initiative developed by Dr. Kamara and Manos Kefalas, the president of the Wikipedia Community School Association Greece, to promote local heritage in regions that are quite remote from urban centers. This has to do with awareness of what we have, what we possess, how we can disseminate, distribute, learn more about, and register those testimonia on Wikipedia. So this is like a twofold activity. First of all, we learn about what we have in remote regions that schools do not have many resources to explore the heritage, and at the same time register this knowledge on Wikipedia. So this is what RoadWiki is about. The presentation is going to be structured as follows. I'm presenting the framework, then Dr. Hadzoglou will say a few more technical things about the program, the funding umbrella. It's an interesting possibility for non-EU countries, as Norway is. And then the content will be analyzed and the results by our experts in the field of heritage and management, Dr. Kamara, Ms. Lambada, and Mr. Manos Kefalas, and of course, Dr. Thomas Hussoy, our Norwegian expert, a historian, who really helped us in documenting the knowledge after having been trained by Manos Kefalas. So it has been a multi-national collaboration. Oops. So what is RoadWiki in a more technical sense? RoadWiki is a bilateral agreement between Norway and Greece under the framework of EA grants program. Does anybody know anything about that? EA grants program is a possibility of finding funding for projects by non-EU countries. Actually, Liechtenstein, Iceland, and Norway. And of course, the amounts you can get vary. We got 6,000. We got a very modest amount, 6,000 euros, not krona, in order to cover some field trips and a couple of, different phases in the project for almost 2 years. Some traveling costs, Aphrodite will analyze. But of course, it can extend to bigger amounts. And if you have an affiliation with one of those donor countries, then you are eligible for that. But we had to find somebody from Norway because NIA, even if it's a bit strange, is not allowed to apply in a bilateral collaboration. We need to have a partner from Greece. Wikipedia Schools Association was the partner from Greece, and the University of Oslo was the partner from Norway. We were lucky enough to have the Department of Archaeology and History, Professor Knut Ødegaard, very familiar to you, to sign that agreement. So this is how it started. You can see some of the main tasks of RoadWiki, documentation of local heritage, be it material or immaterial. So material could be, archaeological finds, books, document historical evidence, whatnot. And then immaterial could expand to food and music and or myths and oral traditions, customs that span from the antique times to contemporary days. So there is no limit. It's not like a framework for antiquity. It is a framework for empowering local societies. It has a deep sociological root in this initiative of EA grants. Also migrants, all the NGOs dealing with refugees, all those small communities are eligible for that. Then you have the training. The second step is to train local teachers and pupils on how to select points of heritage interest. So you go down, you have done your research. Thomas has been, of course, most of you were here for the talk, so you know that Thomas is a specialist on Théière and Arcadia. In that sense, we approached Thomas and we asked him to try to write some sort of academic entries and then see how those entries could be transferred into Wikipedia registrations. In order to for that to happen, Thomas had to sit with Manos and have some educational sessions by Greek experts, meaning Aphrodite and Despina and Manos, in order to get the main methodology. And last but not least, we will have, and I think, Thomas, you have started already, you will show that in your talk, the translation of the English entries to Norwegian. This is part of the agreement. I mean, the more you reach out, the more you connect the two countries, the best the results are. So this is a main thing. You will, of course, ask, why Théière? Théière is the reason for NIA to exist. NIA is a foreign archaeological school. It was established in 1989 to promote Norwegian excavations in Greece. So Eric Østby, one of the first, I think the first one, who started excavating in Greece and then followed by other Norwegian colleagues, for example, Professor Knut Ødegaard, started digging the temple of Athena Alea and creating a kind of legacy for NIA. So Théière was the obvious, as I said in the beginning, the obvious start for this Road Wiki project. But this is not easy because then you have to find partners, interlocutors, people to talk with down in Théière. So who to choose? We chose the gymnasium, we chose the high school. And do we know whether the master, maybe I can't see it here, but maybe Paschalis knows, because she wanted to connect the headmaster of the school that we had the field trip.
Yes, I'm here.
And
a
few words about EA grants. I think I covered that. This is a specific frame, Active Citizens Fund, working together for an inclusive Europe. So it has to do with empowering communities from below, we would say, people that normally don't have a voice, people that normally do not acknowledge themselves the importance of what they possess. It's the core of this initiative. And here you can see one picture of the second field trip and an entry in Greek that was written by Aphrodite, and you will definitely tell us more about that. A final point is that the Road Wiki covers an important part of our strategic plan at NIA. If you know how NIA used to be and other foreign schools, they focused on, antiquity, the past, and mostly, those areas of interest. And nowadays we have the honor and the task to bring Norway and Greece together, no matter whether this is, strictly speaking, antiquity or other fields of interest. So what we do at NIA is to bridge those two countries and bring them together to create networks. Dissemination and outreach is our third pillar of strategy. We have research, teaching, and dissemination. So this falls also under the category of dissemination. Two things for NIA, the year on the one hand and our strategy on the other, past and present. make RoadWiki quite relevant for our current and future planning. This is all for me. I will introduce you to Dr. Hatzoglou Aphrodite, who has been an invaluable resource for the project. I have to say that. She drafted all the budget. She undertook most of the bureaucratic work. But first things first, a few words about Aphrodite and her academic profile. Aphrodite holds a BA in History and Archaeology from Athens, and then her MPhil and PhD from Cambridge in Archaeological Heritage and Museum Studies. Most recently, she obtained a certificate in School Management and Leadership. So you are the best person to bridge those two worlds. You have the knowledge to do that, and you are also interested in bringing Norwegian students to Greece to learn more about Greek culture, especially within the frame of IB programs. So Aphrodite is a link with potential projects in the future. Aphrodite has a long-standing experience in the archaeological sector and international education. She's also the founder of CASE Heritage Studies, a company that aims to familiarize students with contemporary historical and heritage studies views. As a trained educator, Aphrodite has offered various educational trips in which students have the opportunity to develop skills and understanding by means of interacting activities filtered through the lens of the historical past. Thank you so much for the help, the collaboration, and for being here tonight. The floor is yours, and I will come back introducing the rest of the group in a bit.
So my interest in this is bringing Greece and Norway together. And this was an excellent opportunity because I lived in Norway for 10 years in Vestfold. And when I came back, I wanted to maintain my connection with Norway. And this was an excellent opportunity for me to do it. But in this very interesting project, I would say I have done the boring stuff, the administrative stuff, but this is very necessary because without it, we wouldn't have the budget to do all these excellent wiki entries that all the experts have produced. Yeah. I also have a map. Where is the arrow? Yes. So the Active Citizen Fund is part of the implementation of the EEA grant financial mechanism 2014-2021 in Greece. And the donor states that participate are Iceland, Liechtenstein, and Norway. And these donor states aim to contribute to the reduction of economic and social disparities in the economic European area and the strengthening of bilateral relationship between Greece and the donor states. In our case, it is Greece and the donor state is Norway. And the overall objective is the strengthening of civil society, active citizenship, and the empowerment of vulnerable groups. And in our case, in our program, we emphasize the civil society, more specifically the local communities and how they can engage with their past and their local heritage. And this objective is based on the common values of all the countries being part of the European Economic Area. And the values are dignity, freedom, democracy, and human rights. The total amount of the grants is 12 million euros. 92,000 is dedicated to Active Citizens Fund. But every program, every project within the Active Citizens Fund can have up to 6,000 euros, which is what we actually got for our program. And the fund operator for the Active Citizens Fund in Greece is Bodossaki Foundation in consortium with Allilεγγύη and Solidarity Now. So what does this basically mean? Means is that we applied to Bodossaki Foundation for our project. We received an approval, and then the budget, the money in 2 installments. And now that we have completed the project, we have submitted also our final report, and our budget. So Podosaki Foundation is handling the economic element of the program in Greece. So the bilateral cooperation initiatives is part of the Active Citizens Fund, and it has 5 main objectives. The first one is civic engagement, and specifically among young people, and this is what was the focus of our program. Young people, students, middle school students in Tegea, and how they can engage with the past and their heritage. The other sectors are promotion and protection of human rights, watchdog and advocacy roles of the civil society sector, focusing especially on how to influence policymakers and cooperate with local authorities, empowerment of vulnerable groups with a focus on unaccompanied minors and Roma. And the last one is gender equality and especially women empowerment, as well as activities combating gender-based violence. In order to have the bilateral cooperation initiatives, we need to have a partnership with 2 partners. The first one is called Bilateral Initiative Promoter, and is defined as the lead applicant of the proposal, and it has to be an NGO, a non-governmental organization, or entity responsible for submitting the application. And in our case, this was Wikipedia Community Schools Association in Greece. And the other partner has to be an entity from the donor states. And in our case, the donor state is Norway. And it was the University of Oslo, and the Norwegian Institute in Athens is the legal representative of the University of Oslo. So these are the 2 partners of the program. One very, very important element of this program is that it gives a voice to young people with the youth study trips. And this encourages young people from 18 to 30 years old from NGOs, either in Greece or the donor state, to participate in activities that can vary. For example, they can participate in meetings, workshops, exercises, debates, role plays, and activities. In our case, we had Olivia Houssoi, who is a PhD candidate in historical studies at the University of Bristol. And along together with Thomas, he participated in the creation of the wiki articles in Tegea. And the last element of the project is, of course, the location. The location needs to take place either in Greece or in the donor state. And of course, in our case, it was Tegea in Greece. For our program, we did 2 field trips. One took place in April 2023, and the second one in September 2023. In the first field trip, the cultural experts here, Aphrodite, Manos, Thomas, Olivia, Delia, I call them with the first names, as it was the main members of our team, traveled to Tegea to meet the director of the middle school, the teaching staff, and the students, and to inform them about this great initiative, and also with the members of the local community to inform them about what they can do with this very important cultural heritage that they have. And also during this trip, they prepared the main artifacts and elements that would be included in the wiki entries. And in the second phase of the trip, they traveled back again to Tegea, and they had a training session on the students how to create the wiki articles, how to cite reliable sources, how to upload material, how to transfer material from different languages. And of course, they traveled in the surrounding area to photograph and document important elements of the cultural heritage. So these were the 2 main elements of our program, these 2 field trips, in which the wiki entries that you are going to view later from the other presenters were created during these trips. So this is on my end.
Thank you so much. And we must also say that these are photos from the museum in Tegea, which is a fairly new museum and has been awarded the European Best European Museum some years ago. It's very interesting. If you next time you have the time, you should go down to Tegea and have a look both at the finds, the evidence, and the museum. So now the floor is yours, Aphrodite, Dr. Kamara, and her collaborator, Despina Lambada. Aphrodite is a historian and cultural heritage consultant with a PhD from England and Manchester and Oxford, specializing in the history of the Middle East in late antiquity. She has founded Time Heritage, a very specialist organization on the protection and dissemination of heritage in Greece. Is it only in Greece, Aphrodite, or does it encompass other regions?
Well, we are a Greek company, but we collaborate since 2015 with the EU projects. So now we consider ourselves part of a broader network of organizations.
Which focuses also on heritage in different countries.
Well, yes, mainly in rural heritage and rural protection.
Remote areas.
Yes, remote areas.
And Despina Lambada is an archaeologist and art historian, graduated from the National Kapodistrian University Department of History and Archaeology, and obtained a DEA in History of Art from Sorbonne, Paris 1 Panthéon. She is currently completing her PhD as a general art history laboratory, National Technical University Athens. She has worked as a researcher at the Foundation of the Hellenic World, and she's a collaborator of Time Heritage since 2012. So welcome, a warm welcome to you, Despina.
Okay, first of all, just to say that our collaboration with the Wikipedia Schools Association Greece goes back to 2015, when Time Heritage had undertaken its first sort of digitization projects in Greece. We did the digitization of Delphi and Pylos in those days, and part of the prerequisite of the project was to create entries for Wikipedia. And we thought it was an easy thing, but it wasn't, because also Wikipedia has its own rules. So that's when Manos Kefalas, our lifesaver, came across. And ever since, we have maintained a collaboration, and we, both Despina and I, are now members of the association. So we're going to tell a few things about what has inspired us in the first place to approach the local communities. In 2018, probably some of you remember, it was the European Year of Cultural Heritage. And it was right then that several initiatives saw the light of day regarding the enhancement of European cultural heritage in an inclusive manner. That was the important thing, inclusiveness. So according to all the jargon developed in those days, heritage is what bridges difference, basically, and creates understanding for the common roots. Among the other ideas put forward in that year was that cultural heritage belongs to all. It's a common value. The work of experts, of course, is very, very important, and that's how everything starts, but it has to find its way to be shared and appreciated by the general public. So cultural heritage is definitely something that citizens cherish, and they should learn how to appreciate it as part of their identity. So local heritage and local cultural heritage deserve a separate learning process somehow. We were inspired by these ideals, let's say, and we started trying to create some projects also in Greece. Back in those days, we were actually implementing a European project called Digital Educational Network for Cultural Projects Implementation and Direction. The shorter version is DENCUPID. So we started delving into the ideas of cultural heritage mapping. And you as archaeologists probably will come across the process of it in the future, maybe, because cultural heritage mapping is a very important process for local communities and local agents in order for them to know what lies within their territory and to assess its potential. As I was telling Delia before, we have been collaborating with municipalities for more than 10 years. And usually municipalities are very open. They want projects to be implemented. But the first question that we asked them was, okay, what's your cultural resources? And they didn't really have a list, so they didn't really know what they had in their hands. And that's how everything began. So what actually cultural heritage is? It's a process of finding what we have and knowing how to map it. We record monuments and sites, we record historic houses, cultural landscapes, traditional architecture, museums, cultural organizations, and even the intangible cultural heritage like customs, rites, dialects, dance, music, etc. And how do we do it? Well, in the past, we used to do it by writing, but nowadays, modern technology allows a more interactive representation of all those elements in a web environment through Google Maps, Wikipedia, Wikimedia Commons, and Wikipedia, so that we can enhance and understand the cultural traces of the region. Right now, here at the bottom, you can see the word Poilog written. This is an app that has been developed by a company in Thessaly, which was flooded recently. And it's an app that you can have on your mobile phone in order to record elements of local cultural heritage and their documentation. So it's something that schools, for example, can do it with their teacher, or local cultural associations can do it on an excursion, on a Sunday excursion. So cultural heritage mapping becomes more and more easy, let's say. Apart from cultural heritage, we also have history. I am a historian, for example, but I ended up working in cultural heritage promotion. In order to reverse the sort of national or rather nationalistic historic narratives, which resonated in 19th or early 20th century nationalistic approach, local history, or rather local histories, emerged at the intellectual landscape of the early 21st century, that is roughly 20 years ago, as a path for narratives that include minorities, descent, social difference, ethnic difference, and microhistory, the local history. Well, now, what can we term as local history? It depends on the viewpoint, and it depends on the frame of mind of each researcher. Local history can be linked to local folklore and ethnography. It can be linked to family history, or it can be linked to what we call histoire de mentalité, the mentalities, local mentalities. In general, it resonates a genuine interest for gathering and presenting information of the level of a local community, a town, a village, or a region. Oral history groups have emerged as well, and they are closely linked to the development of local history, as are local museums. For example, I don't know if any of you has read this book. This is a famous book for the Histoire de Mentalité, The Cheese and the Worms, written by Carlo Ginzburg, which from a simple collection of letters and a diary of a 16th century miller, he managed to reconstruct the entire frame of mind of a 16th century plain villager. Nowadays, oral history groups are quite common. Municipalities have their own, schools have their own, local associations, anthropologists, NGOs try to create their own local oral history groups. Historima is the best known, let's say, of all these groups, which managed to get some funding from another foundation, the Stavros Niarchos Foundation, and it has proceeded to gather oral histories and make them into digital storytelling, basically. So if you Google Historima, you can come across interesting stories divided according to themes. Local history, however, rarely finds its way in the national school curricula. Although sometimes lately in Greece, this has started to take off. Regardless of the official curricula, however, there are many ways of addressing the public and steering interest in local history. For example, organized history walks. That's part of what we do in Time Heritage. Creating apps and crowdsourcing platforms where the people themselves can upload family material, family stories, or whatever. Digital games and applications in local museums, public spaces, etc. Digital storytelling, as I told you before, Historima is doing this process. And the organization of events, festivals, schools festivities, lectures, etc. In almost all villages and all places in Greece, you can find some of these manifestations of local history, but usually they're not very well organized. Now, Wikiculture, or RoadWiki as we now call it, is a Wikipedia, like a structure of Wikipedia made for making cultural heritage mapping easy and present it in a quite detailed manner. Manos Kefalas is going to tell you more about it. But the main idea is that we have some pre-designed entries that the users can use in order to form a well-developed and well-structured entry in Wikipedia. Let's put, for example, Tegea on our cultural map and visit virtually its monuments, houses, churches, mills, villages, and schools. Tegea, as you probably know, is located on a mountainous plain in the administrative district of Arcadia, Greece, and it's a more or less rural area. In September 2023, we visited it during 4 days, I think it was the entire project, and we tried to locate almost every specimen of material cultural heritage and some information about intangible cultural heritage, which we then brought to the attention of the high school headmaster and the students, and the whole process ended up in a thorough seminar on how to record the local cultural heritage through Wikipedia. My colleague Despina is going to now present you what we did during these days.
Hello, everyone. Just remember, I'm going to, I was part of the second trip there, not the first one, unfortunately, but I will talk a little bit about the process of tracking down and photographing material culture. Actually, what you need to remember is that all the examples I'm going to show you are date to 19th century onwards, because we specialized on recent heritage. This was for various reasons, but one of them was that actually it is this sort of material that children are not very familiar with for some reason in schools, especially in rural areas, because they don't really valorize it a lot. So, for example, an archaeological museum is easy for them to grasp, and they can understand the value of archaeological materials because they see it highlighted in this way. And on the other side, when they need to assess their recent heritage, they don't really realize why this is important. All they see is either very old buildings, dilapidated ones, or buildings that had been important at some point, but they do not really know why they are important right now. So we wanted to first record such material and make it accessible for them. and use it in order to let them understand what of course, the process of using material that it is documented in a correct way. They can trace it and understand the idea of Creative Commons and licensing under Commons, Creative Commons license, but also, yes, visual material with which they could actually work when they would make their entries. So here Aphrodite has written down the Wikiculture team for the first trip, which I wasn't part of. And you can see all the names that you have listened to before. I'm not sure I pronounced correctly. Thomas Husay Katia? Τσάτσια. Olivia Τσάτσια, Delia Georgiak, of course. Patricia Yiannopoulou, Manos Kefallas, Aphrodite Kamara, and Aphrodite Hadjoglou, who has also addressed you, yes, as our project manager. And the second trip, now Plato's name is correct here. Andriadis, I remembered. So on the second trip, we were there with Manos, Aphrodite, Pavlos Stamos, who unfortunately is not with us today, Platon Antoniadis, okay? And I will talk to you about this photo later on. Of course, we had to make a plan because Tegea used to be a municipality at one point, and administratively it comprises a lot of villages and towns in the area. And to show you a couple of visual examples of what we were trying to record. And this, for example, is from Episkopii. Episkopii is one of the villages, towns, very close to Alea, where the archaeological museum is, and very close to Stadion, which was once the administrative center of Tegea. And it had some obvious choices, of course, because it has many material remains pertaining to the activity of the Tegean Association, or Tegeatikos Sύνδεσμος, which was very active in the 19th century onwards. And in this case, we did include the Byzantine Church of the Dormition in our photo survey, specifically because it has been restored by Chiller. And this Chiller restoration was actually commissioned by the Tegeatikos Sύνδεσμος. And it dominates a place, actually a part of the park at the outskirts of the archaeological park there. And also the open-air bus exhibition of various prominent figures of the Tegeatikos Sύνδεσμος, the Tegean Association. And it's also very close to the home economic school of the Tegeatikos Sύνδεσμος, which was at the time a very important school there. And it is, of course, spatially connected to archaeological site. Now, this home economic school had been recently restored, and it was supposedly a folklore museum. But unfortunately, maybe it is just a managing problem, but it proved very difficult to access it. Actually, we found it closed. We couldn't find someone to call and ask for permission to enter. And the only reason I'm saying that is because it was yet another example of how this sort of heritage, even in cases where it can be restored and it can be recognized as something important, it still proves very difficult to be managed efficiently in order for it to remain functional. And this goes back to the difficulty of the local communities, especially the younger members of these communities, to actually develop an experiential relationship with these sort of places. You may have heard, for example, that the Athenians can go for years without even visiting the Acropolis. And we are in Athens, and Acropolis is, I don't know, our highlight. Now imagine how much more difficult it becomes for younger people, especially in remote areas, where even these sort of places becomes not really inaccessible, but it's not part of their everyday experience for any reason. Stadion, of course, it is a walking distance, really. We tried to take some photos from older monuments there, older buildings there, still 19th century, early 20th century. The church that you see that way is not very impressive. I can tell it seems very 20th century and late 20th century. But in fact, and that was the interesting thing about actually doing a survey there and choosing while we were there, because we, of course, we had every old elementary school in our list because they were obvious choices for our survey. But in Stadion's case, what we had in mind in terms of churches was the church of the Central Square. I believe it was Saint Demetrius. But passing by, we realized that this church had a very interesting inscription. It is dedicated to Saint Athanasius. It was a cemetery church at some point. It dates back to early 19th century. It has been badly restored, badly. It has been restored in a way that makes it functional, but does not recognize its anciency and its importance as a monument of sorts. So it was very easy for us to overlook it, and even more easy for children to overlook it as something that they would document in a Wikipedia entry, for example. Of course, we were at Alea also. Then we were able at least to enter the museum, and also Kerassitsa is another interesting place because it is the place of origin of a Greek politician and peace activist, Grigorios Lambrakis, who was a major influence for progressive leftist movements in 1960s. And he was very influential also for youth movement at that era. And Kerassitsa is his place of origin, so we were able to first include his family house in our survey. And also what you see is Grigorios Lambrakis' father's old workshop and shop, which has now been restored and turned into the cultural center of the town. This is I think that it had been inaugurated a few months before September. So it was fairly new at that point, and hopefully it will have a better luck than the home economics school of the Teggiatikos Synδεσμος. Here you see again this photo. By now you may have memorized it. Kandalos was another village at the area where we were actually able to see that a lot of the landmarks that we photographed and video captured had been associated with a certain family, with the name Kutsopanagos, because this was a family that had produced local magistrates, I think some church leaders at the area, a resistant fighter who was commemorated in an inscription, and also the town's old cultural center. I don't know if it's still at use, we couldn't assess that. But it is also named after the same family. So it was very interesting to see these sort of very recent connections and actually capture it. But in this case, this is of course one of the old houses, and we have included it in this presentation because It has this sort of traditional katoi, the underground storage area. And that day was a very hot and very humid one. And these sort of undergrounds are very cool places. And the reason that we are in front of this opening, actually it's an inside joke, because we stood before that place and we were able to cool down a little bit. It was still so cool. And of course, it is also a specimen of older ways of building, of conserving things, of making arrangements for places where you could keep things to not go bad before fridges was a staple in every school, in every house. Vounneau, we included these photos here because Vounneau was one of those villages where we realized how important our work was for local people even before we entered again the school. Because in many cases when we were making the survey, people from the towns and the villages would approach us, ask us what we do, because they saw the equipment and they were curious. And when they realized that what we were doing was taking photos and amassing material for even for that sort of work, the Wikipedia entries, they were very excited. They were very eager to help us. This photo here is of the old elementary school at Vounneau. It's one of the best preserved old school buildings, because the local people there, they are making efforts. They have given donations. The family of the president of the community is very active in keeping it clean, in organizing a small exhibition of legacy photos inside, and making sure that it is used for some functions at least, because this is very important for buildings to be preserved. They need to be used in order to be preserved, really. And they were more than happy to show us around. For example, they showed us to this windlass well. Αυτό δεν είναι το μαγκανοπήγατο. Windlass. And of course, all their houses. And also, they showed us this church, again, of the 19th century. We weren't aware of its presence. It is still used, so inside the arrangement is one of modern day Orthodox church, but still it was one of those buildings that we wouldn't be aware of if it wasn't for the locals. And we had a similar experience in Kamari, where again the president of the community was very eager to show us around, to give us directions for some more remote buildings, or, well, remainings of buildings such as the mills. What you see here is an old mill, what is left of it. And she also, we had a long conversation with her. She was very excited that we're doing this. She recognized how difficult it is to discuss this sort of heritage as something that could be restored and in any way be included in programs funded by the Minister of Culture, because they are very modern, because other things are always more pressing, more important. So she was very interested in exploring other ways to raise awareness and to see how she could mobilize local communities and other agents in order to somehow make sure that at least some of them would be preserved. I think that I'm talking for a long time, and I have to give the floor to Manos. So this is also from another village that we visited, but I'm going to leave it here and give the floor to Manos, and he will talk about how we work with children, the hands-on experience. So, thank you.
So, hi, Manos. Thank you very much for your contribution. You are a freelance professional and credited adult educator in information technology. You have been working with this tool for how many years?
Well, I'm in Wikipedia movement since 2010.
2010.
And I started educating others for being Wikipedians since 14.
Okay.
So I have a lot of years of
experience.
Yes.
The floor is yours.
So what's here? We have our association that now, well, this is a Wikipedia article. Let's, is it shared? I think not. So
I think you
probably you only see me now. So.
No.
Okay, this is just an example of what we did. This is an article we used to train the students of Gymnasium of Tegea. With our group, we went at the Tegea region and visited all the sites that you saw before. And we also visited libraries, so we can have the sources needed in order to be able to write content that is documented. So we took this material, and we had also these photos from our field research, and we went back to the school. And you know, these kids in Tegea, they gather from all villages around and come in one school. So they came from all these areas that we went there and took photographs and had this drone take these videos and photos from well, for wide views of the villages and the places they live in. But they only see it as their village. Now they had the chance to see it as something that could go out to the world. And they could be the ones that would present it. So we gave an example on how to make an entry for some priest that was a local there. And we started this and showed the students how we write in Wikipedia and what the rules are, something that you heard before that is not very, very easy. But we made it easy because of the experience. And well, they were excited. And they loved to, and they asked to do it themselves. So we are now in a process that we will collaborate with the Gymnasium of Tegea, and we'll give them the results of our field research to have the students produce the material, the content in Wikipedia and Wikimedia Commons themselves. So we went and we had seen the church in Episcopi from outside. They are locals, so they have the opportunities to see it in their own way. so they can make it richer. And you can imagine that people that are not, are a bit cut off of their local heritage and culture, that are the ones that write. They are the writers of these parts of themselves, the local culture, and they are the ones that are the keepers of it. So we think it as a nice way to make them engaged, and well, they will be the ones that will keep it for the years ahead. So it was very we felt nice for doing this, and the principal was also excited for this, and I think that we are now in a process that there's going to be a collaboration, a program that will be funded between the school of Tegea and other European schools. So this is going to be a good one. What we have collected here will be put in a web page that will be a first guide to take sources and take material and put it what we have done as a field research, and to make these children well put it themselves in Wikipedia and share it to the whole world. And this will be translated to other languages. And well, it won't stop here, what we did. And it's what we love to do, what I started. Well, I wanted people to be engaged in sharing knowledge. And that's what we've managed here, I think. Well, it's funny, but writing in Wikipedia is not an easy task, because you have to follow the rules. Rules in a collaborative environment, one that is very strict. Yes, we see that this article here needs some work. It says it doesn't belong to any category there, and there's a mark, so it can be improved. When we write down, we write up in Wikipedia, we upload content. Someone else comes and says this is right, this is wrong. If it's not that good, you get something like criticized. Well, you can imagine a school student writing in Wikipedia, and someone comes after him or her and reverts the content. How can the student feel about that? Will the student continue to feel like he have to engage, or will they be disappointed and go off? These are things that we have handled in our approach in Wikipedia Community Schools Association Greece. So the seed is here to write for the cultural, for the culture and this content to show their cultural heritage and history and whatever. But we also make the students that are engaged in this no, it's like I'm sorry, it's like we make them ready to go inside Wikipedia and write. That is they have to learn how to collaborate and have to stand for values. So they can't write in Wikipedia without knowing about rights of, for content, like copyright laws. And they have, in order to write well and not be rejected, they have to not only follow the rules, but they have to write down things. When we go to school, we usually use our pen or whatever when the exams come. So Wikipedia is something to practice on, to have a nice way of saying things, and it'll be like academic speech. It is Wikipedia, but you have to write the way that will be accepted. So it's a very good training for language skills. So it's an education tool, Wikipedia itself, for these students. It's another point of view of what we're gonna do with the school at later time. And well, I'm happy for this. I'm happy for the result, with very good partners that did excellent job producing this content that will be used later on from students, and will be, I hope, an example for more. And that's what I had to say.
Thomas will continue the story of writing. With more concrete examples. I think you all know Thomas, Dr. Thomas Husserl, historian and outreach officer from Norway originally, but studied in the UK, Swansea University. And he's now working at the Norwegian Church Art Centre in Cardiff as an outreach officer.
Hello, everyone. I'm delighted to be here today to have the final presentation in presenting the RoadWiki project. And I'm very grateful that I was asked to come and speak at the promo event. So I've been quite enjoying this project, being a part of it. And I still remember when I first sort of reached out to the Institute a few years ago, just to ask for their potential support in a study trip to Greece. And then the then director at the Institute, Udo Ökland, sent me an email like, hey, we're planning to do this thing. And then shortly afterwards, Delia sent me more information, and so sort of a gateway into working with cultural heritage and digital humanities, which is what I now work with in Cardiff. And I got a nice description of the sort of the plan of the project, what Wikipedia Community School Association Greece does, and I thought this is something to be really fascinating to be a part of. So I've been doing more sort of the academic and antiquity related entries and sort of preparing those alongside a fellow historian from the University of Bristol, as we mentioned earlier, Olivia Shashia. Two of our entries is on the pictures here. So this is one she wrote on the Arcadian cults of the mistresses. So that's Demeter, Demeter, Cora, and in Arcadia, a third goddess called Despoina, which you don't find outside the region. This is very cool. In Lycion, yeah. But very much state that she's a goddess over the whole region, which is a very cool character. The second one was the very first one we did, and that's where Manos gave me some training whilst I was writing it, because this was my sort of introduction into doing Wikipedia things as well. And that's on the concept of Prosylenos, or the idea that the Arcadians are actually older than the moon. Because, you know, when you claim to be old, you have to be older than celestial things. Right. So I have called my talk today Wikipedia and local history. The local history is something I've always been very fascinated by. And played a very significant part in my doctoral study of the ancient world, because I did a study looked at identity and ethnicity on multiple levels, going from the local all the way up to the Hellenic, and seeing how all of this interacted in the ancient world. And there's actually been a very big upswing recently in studies looking into local history from an ancient perspective, which is quite interesting as well. But more about that another time. But as I said, this was my first sort of introduction into Wikipedia. And coming from sort of a more academic university setting, we know how the sentiments towards Wikipedia is within the universities. So since joining this project, I have read about Wikipedia as an academic and educational resource for disseminating knowledge outside from academia and into the rest of the knowledge sphere as well. Because I figured that that's a good place to start this paper. So I'll talk a little bit about where academics stands with Wikipedia first, before I talk a little bit about the entries me and Olivia wrote, because I discovered quite a bit of interesting things, I think. And then I will be talking about some of the entries, and I'll be talking about one of the first entries I have been translating to Norwegian and getting that sort of bilateral thing going. So starting off there by the research into academia, or how academic research on Wikipedia is standing. Now, traditionally, Wikipedia has been criticized among scholars. But in my research, sort of in the early stages, I even come across a scholar who, ever since Wikipedia was launched, has been saying, oh, it's going to fail in 5 years. And he says this every other year. So clearly, he's stubborn on that point, despite the fact that clearly he's entirely wrong, because Wikipedia is consistently ranked amongst the top 10 websites visited worldwide. Currently, it's number 7, only beaten by things like Facebook and Google. And there's no other encyclopedia anywhere near it. So it is actually a very valuable tool to disseminate research. There's an organization in the UK called the Women's Classical Committee, who's been doing a lot of work with Wikipedia. And some of their members published an article in a journal called the Council of University Classics Departments Bulletin, because classical academic name for a journal, where they initially states that in terms of establishing and accessing knowledge, Wikipedia is too important to ignore. And I do think they're correct. It is a very, very important institution now in sort of that way of sharing knowledge, but also of people, as Magnus says, having the ability of actually producing it and altering it on there, and that way they become a part of the process, which is quite important locally as well. And then an even better statement comes from a volume on digital humanities, where Lishi says that at this moment in its short life, Wikipedia is already the most comprehensive, representative, and persuasive participatory platform for knowledge production ever created by humankind. And that's also accurate. There's nothing quite like Wikipedia out there. To be fair, I quite like that volume, except for that part of the title. But yes, it's a very important resource. And they sort of, when doing the research, they sort of made me more excited to be a part of doing this and actually familiar myself more with using Wikipedia, especially to share that tangible and intangible heritage of a local place that's normally a little bit more off the beaten chart, so to say. So places that are more remote and get their stories out as well. So I was quite happy with that bit. Of course, as with most resources, it does have some issues with biases, inconsistency, inaccuracies due to sort of an open editorial platform. However, studies have actually found that Wikipedia is on par with a lot of more traditional authority resources that are out there, such as several academic journals, meaning Wikipedia is on par with academic writings in some cases. And in the UK, there's become a push to say academics should get involved in writing this. They still don't want to cite it in the works, but they're happy to write it now. So there's a step in the right direction of academics getting involved. But the interesting thing is that Wikipedia has a non-original research policy, which means they encourages people to interact with the secondary sources and behave as an encyclopedia, which is what it claims to be. So it is a ginormous encyclopedia who is, as I quote earlier, the largest knowledge base ever created. So that's quite fascinating as well, and it's something that really cannot be ignored, and it does provide several benefits to editors, as Manos has been mentioning as well. Critical thinking skills, source evaluation, citation, teamwork, collaboration across boundaries, collaboration locally. It's a very good tool. As you can say, I have become kind of a little bit of a convert. So these facts make Wikipedia a very intriguing and handy resource for preserving and disseminating this information. And in particular important for more remote places that aren't really on there as much as the bigger, more famous locations. So I'm now gonna change my focus a little bit to go over to the sort of my involvement in the project and what I've been doing. It almost seems as a computer knows when I'm changing. Now, when Jorunn and Delia first launched the project in 2020, which is the same year as I got involved, they encouraged sort of beginning with an article mapping kind of thing to sort of an outline of what we could potentially write about. And I wrote that together with Karina Krokenes, who was the intern here at the Institute at the time from the University of Tromsø. I never actually got to meet her in person. All our communication was always via Zoom or email because, you know, pandemic made it slightly hard to meet. But she's very nice from our digital correspondence. So we created sort of an overview. There's about 23, so it didn't end at 6. So there's about 23 that we produced an overview of, where we, because I'm an ancient specialist, a lot of them are ancient themed, where we wrote sort of a potential title for them, title what it would be about, sources, some extra sources because you can never have enough sources, and then there's initials for whether it was me or Karina who added it. As you can see, some of them we added together as well. As an example, say Alpheus and the Sarandopotamus, which is referring to a particular river guard in Arcadia. Whilst this river is nearer to Tegea itself and isn't actually physically connected to Alpheus, but in antiquity, this river was considered one thing. So they will consider the same thing because there was a thing of river guards going under the ground, appearing elsewhere. So that could be an interesting part of local intangible heritage that isn't necessarily brought forward that much. So we created sort of this one as sort of our examples of what could potentially be done. We say though, in addition to these sources, there were other things we would add as well to make sure that we stuck within the notability criteria for Wikipedia. Because I remember one of the ones I wrote, I had to go into the talk page a fair bit and sort of sort it out to a good standard. So I got my experience with Wikipedians who says, well, you need to do this to make it as good as possible. Which again, it created a better product. So that's always what you want, isn't it? Right. So then I'm going to go over to some of the entries. Oh, yes. Over to the entries to say that I went on the first field trip in the spring of 2023, and there's a lovely picture of me and Manos sitting at the hotel in Tegea, and he's teaching me how to use Wikipedia. I can't remember if it was Delia or Olivia or Patricia who took the photo, but yeah. But this was also a stage where Olivia joined us. And then me and her wrote 3 different entries while we were there and just added more to it later as we were sitting in the UK to add in those example ones we had created onto Wikipedia as well. But yeah, I quite enjoyed that trip down and I learned a lot from it. Much thanks to Manos' expertise in Wikipedia. Right, then the entries. First, I'll be doing the Arcadian Cults of the Mistresses that was written by Olivia. The entry focuses on the Cults of the Mistress in Arcadia, as I said. It includes 2 villages in Tegea, which this is one that covers slightly larger in Arcadia, but she also included small passages on the cults in Agios, Sostis, and Tegea, as we see screenshots from here, which are villages within the historical Tegean area. The bibliography as well over here shows this is actually a little bit longer, quite a bit longer than this, because she did quite rigorous research for it. The bibliography has all of those secondary sources that makes it a notable article for Wikipedia. It does also include some ancient sources like Herodotus. It directly relates to one of the ones we had at the entry, with something that I always found fascinating when I wrote my doctoral thesis. There's this big festival that happens everywhere in the Greek world, except in the Peloponnese, with the exception of the Arcadians, because they like to be different to the rest of the Peloponnesians. So Herodotus states that they are the only ones that actually celebrate this festival in the entirety of the Peloponnesian Peninsula. So that's also something that could come up as a potential local intangible heritage thing to bring into the local consciousness of their ancient heritage. But another benefit of an entry like this one is that it allows readers to look up sort of more large and very famous things like the goddess Demeter. If they search it on Wikipedia, this article will come up somewhere on the search list, and they get linked to the Tegean heritage. So it spreads the word of the Tegean and Arcadian heritage much further. So that is quite a fascinating one. And then it's the Procellenus. This is the one that was the very first we wrote, but this is also the one that where I had that sort of go back and forward on the talk page, because there was someone who didn't think this was notable enough. So I had to find ways of justifying it and making it into a good piece. I think I managed in the end, because eventually the talk page stopped going. It's either that or he got tired of me updating. I hope it's the first one. But as you see here as well, it has quite a good bibliography with, in this case, a few academic resources and so on. Also has links to the sources that's available freely online. But the fact that someone engaged on the talk page critically is an excellent example of how people from the Wikipedia community actually engages with all of this. But not just in terms of that, because I also had, there's a screenshot here of a person who went in and he added categories for me. He or she, I don't know who they are, and their username doesn't give any clues. But they went in, added categories, so it's a part of that sort of wider people expanding on creating a very good end product, and that further disseminates the Tegean and Arcadian heritage out to the world. Right, and then the final one that I will mention today, and I like to call him the Thucydides of Tegean, again, is an ancient part of their heritage that is also very unknown to a lot of people, actually, even within academia, because Arietis of Tegea is an actual Tegean historian, which is something that I think is very cool. It's something people should be able to know more about. But unfortunately, all of his fragments has for a very long time been behind paywalls. So what I did when I wrote this entry, and there's a screenshot of part of it there, I wrote a little summary of every fragment on the Wikipedia page. So it disseminates that Tegean heritage that's behind paywalls out to Wikipedia and make it available for people, which I'm quite happy about, because again, I quite like Arietis' work. He is a very locally focused author, and as I mentioned in my talk on Tuesday, he has some details about Arcadian and Tegean mythology that is different to the main narratives. Callisto doesn't feature in it. Instead, it's Megisto. So it's a very fascinating one in terms of that dynamic. So I'm very glad to be able to bring this part of Tegean ancient history into Wikipedia, and hopefully more people can see it and read about him. But yeah, so just sort of another example of the dissemination of Tegean heritage onto Wikipedia through writing these entries. Because he's so Arcadian that his history work was called Arcadica, so it would all have been Arcadian at the end. So these 3 entries are good examples of Wikipedia can be applied as a knowledge exchange platform and allows for the sharing of Tegean and Arcadian local history and material, as well as immaterial heritage further afield. And a project like RoadWiki can actively encourage the local population to take part in creating these themselves and learning about these characters and be able to add them to Greek Wikipedia, for instance. So yeah, and I picked these three, but they were not the only entries me and Olivia worked on. There's also one for the Temple of Athena Leia, which I haven't put on here. And I will say I added a section on it about the Norwegian excavations, because since the Institute was the people who invited me along.
It's a big part of that.
Yes. They've been there since the 90s. And then say a little bit about that sort of bilateral aspect of it and getting things into Norwegian. And I chose that one that where Iris has this lovely epithet that you see there that goes, it's a very long epithet. It's a very fascinating story it's based on. And again, it's an interesting aspect of ancient Tegean heritage that isn't really often talked about. And it's a story that goes that the Spartans invades Tegea, but all the men are out fighting a war somewhere else. So the women comes together, gathers weapons, and they defeat the Spartans. These women then set up a festival in the honor of Ares, the god of war, yeah. And through that, they only invite women to participate in this festival. So this is a specifically women-only festival celebrating a woman victory over the Spartan invaders. So I think that's a very interesting part of Tegean heritage to bring forward as well, in terms of ancient material that isn't often talked about. But these are one of the ones I decided to translate into Norwegian. Over here, there's a sort of beginning of doing that over to Nynorsk, because I decided to give myself a challenge. It's been a few years since the last time I did anything in Nynorsk. But the way you access this tool is you press the language button and you get the option to add a language. So go in there and they have both Bokmål and Nynorsk, and I chose Nynorsk. It is what I quite like about the Wikipedia as a translational thing, because quite often machine translation do have errors because they translate directly. They don't normally account for the changes that is in different structures between languages. However, I quite quickly came to realize that Wikipedia has a thing on the side that tells you that, well, this is still 100% similar, and it's just precisely translated, so we will not let you publish this. This can only be published once you have edited enough for it to go down to a certain percent, and we can accept that it might be of a reasonable grammatical standard in a different language. And I don't think I've seen any other machine translation tool who actually do that. So I quite like that in the process of translating things. It means I couldn't be sloppy, but yeah, so it's been quite a lot of learning curve to learn that translational thing that brings this Tegean heritage into the Norwegian Wikipedia as well. And with that, bringing it to the Norwegian archaeologists and historians who have been working on this, as well as new generations of archaeologists and historians in Norway who's coming up. And it also highlights that sort of long tradition of the Institute's work in Tegea and helps bringing that to a more public audience in Norway as well. So I'm quite happy with that. And that was it for me. And since I was the last speaker, I decided a nice smiley face.
Thank you so much, Thomas. A question for the students actually now, since Thomas has made some entries, more of those that we have seen. If you're interested in helping, disseminating, and translating some of the English entries to Norwegian, then you can contact Thomas. You or any other of your colleagues at the university, you can definitely do that and be part of the outreach and the bilateral collaboration and RoadWiki and everything that you've heard tonight. But before moving on, any comments, any questions, any additions, ideas? have one for Aphrodite Kamara, and it's the following. How are we going to disseminate the material to the locals now? I mean, we are at this point. We have produced a good quantity of entries in English. First of all, is there any thoughts of translating them into Greek, the English?
Of course.
Of course.
Of course. And also translate Greek texts that we have produced, like the one you showed before, mine, translate them into English, so
into
they can
English
be part.
or Norwegian?
Or
of
Norwegian.
course,
Well, for
you
us,
need
no.
to have the Greek first.
Well, once they're in English, I can prove it.
Yeah, that was. And what about this? The last one, the Norwegian you showed us. It was not produced by you. It was already in Wikipedia, and you translated it in your Norsk.
No, I have already made a bookmal version of it. So I decided to make a nynorsk as well, because for some reason I'm crazy.
Okay, but the content was yours.
The contact is mine,
okay.
yeah.
It was not a ready-made, let's say, entry. So you produced the entry and then you, okay. So we need to find a way to disseminate what you created, to the locals.
Well, my idea was, first of all, to approach, of course, the schools and the cultural associations, because in Arcadia, not only in Tegea, but all over Arcadia, there are several cultural associations, grassroots organizations. So it would be nice to create something like a press release or something with links to our entries, so that people can probably invite us to imitate and replicate this effort. And also it's important because we didn't have time to really delve into the intangible cultural heritage, but for example, we know that in Episkopi there is a very, very big panegyri, a local festivity and commercial fair taking place every year. So it would be nice if the students of the schools or if somebody from the associations would like to record that and create articles exactly about that and upload material in Wikimedia Commons. So I believe one way is to the cultural associations and the school, and the other, I would dare say, maybe some municipalities. For example, the central municipality of Tripoli, has created a Ψηφιακό Museo, a digital museum of Tripoli. So they might be interested in finding a spot in their material for what we did there and project it as a good example, as a good case, to be imitated also in a more central way in Tripoli. I mean, I thought that the museum could become a hub for similar activities. Let's say make a week of Wikipedia writing for the local students, etc.
We haven't given that much of thought, but it's worth it to try find ways to. And also maybe from the Norwegian perspective, you might also think that Road Wiki as a promo for other local heritage, testimony, evidence that you would like, or departments at the university might be interested in looking at this tool, because this is a, like Aphrodite said before, is a broader tool. It's not for Greece, it's just a kind of an international research and documentation tool for every country that might be willing to do such work. So it's not only the end results that we are showing here, but also the methodology of working with these kinds of heritage evidence.
Yes, and as Thomas said before, we have noticed that the more people work on a certain entry, the better the entry becomes. For example, entries about ancient history, let's say ancient wars, Hellenistic wars, etc., are really like almost like academic articles, long and elaborated and with very, very good bibliography. So that's why we encourage people. I know that many people disregard Wikipedia because it's sort of bottom-up approach, but on the other hand, the more professionals, let's say, go into elaborating articles, the better these articles become.
As I said, there are articles on there that is actually scoring higher on scientific index than a lot of authority journals.
Exactly.
Which is really interesting to me. And even Britannica has fallen behind, which is even more interesting.
And let's face it, many children use Wikipedia for their home exercise.
Their main reference.
So again, it's like offering something to our own children if we improve what they have access to.
Which brings me to my last point. Are there any editors? Because I've been in a seminar some years ago about Wikipedia writing, and they were talking about editors that exist. It's not like an open field of, you know, whoever does anything. There are some sort of licensed editors to comment and correct and lead sort of the entries. Do you have any idea about that, and who those people might be and how they are chosen for Wikipedia? Do you, Manos, do you have any idea about that?
No, this is not the thing.
This is not true.
Yeah, not
because
true.
we were told by a Wikipedia trainer. That's why I'm telling that. It's
No,
not,
that doesn't.
it doesn't exist.
Yeah. It's well, everyone can participate. Everyone can write, but he or she has to write it down the proper way. If they do it, it's okay.
But is there any guidance towards that way, apart from some regulations?
Not really. The guidance is, in fact, the error and correction process that makes your heart pump and you say after a while, I'm gonna live out of here. And if you do it to kids, and you have to prepare them and make them feel like it's a process for themselves to become better.
So you mean there is no control over the content?
Well, there is control from the other editors,
From
but
the PR editors.
but because there is so much work to be done and so many edits to be followed and checked out, they don't deal with you to make you better. You have to find the way to become better yourself. And this is how you learn how to learn. And this is principle.
Also, it depends on how much time some people can give. So there are people who are really passionate about it. So they spend hours every day out of their free time, I suppose. But that doesn't mean that they are licensed by somebody. It's just that they are more active than others.
Okay, and more informed probably and more knowledgeable than others.
I will say that in the UK at the moment, I think there's 70 UK universities on English Wikipedia who has made it a part of their assessments for students to edit it. So they have the academic oversight and get students actively involved in doing it there. So not editors, but they are students from academia. So.
Yes, it's not a designated role or something, but members of the community can take it upon themselves to actually have a more active participation in this sort of thing because they know that they have this sort of expertise and they undertake it as a personal initiative.
So if there's nothing else, I think we should first.
Sorry. No. I was just seeing that there were a couple of comments in chat.
They are saying.
Okay. No, I was curious if it was a question or something.
It's Olivia who likes a quote. That she's going to include in her thesis.
And the headmaster. We have to thank her for being with us, the headmaster of the Tegea High School. And thank you all for joining. It was a very seminar-like presentation tonight, but it's for promo purposes, and we are happy to disseminate the recording to different institutions. Thank you, partners, for all your work, and let's hope that we can somehow continue in disseminating the year and doing more stuff in the area as the next step. So thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Time for a glass of wine.